Hello, my name is Voya, and today's video I would like to share with you something that I believe is important and that you may find useful. Today we live in a world that's completely overflowing with apps. Calendar apps, task managers, notifications, blingies all over the place. And oddly enough, many of those apps are designed and there to help you stay organized, centralized, be more productive and be more effective. Yet many of us struggle with clarity, organization, and mental structure on a daily basis. And the point is not that digital apps are bad. On the contrary, they're quite useful, in some cases necessary. What I want to talk about is that there is a skill, a very, very old skill, that we are quietly abandoning while adopting the digital apps. I'm talking about handwriting and the power of analog-style planning. When I say analog, I don't mean that in a nostalgic or paper romantic type of a way. No, not at all. I mean that is a method that actually science shows is uniquely powerful. Handling physical notebooks, pen and paper and all of that stuff, it's bulky, it's cumbersome, and most importantly, it's very, very difficult to integrate it seamlessly back into the world of digital apps. Enter the world of ePaper tablets. Very sexy, very nice looking, incredibly useful and powerful. And these act as a perfect bridge between harnessing the power of analog-style planning and seamlessly integrating it into our existing workflow that revolves around digital tools. So today I want to explore why analog-style planning, why it's so effective on ePaper devices, and how it can dramatically improve clarity and control in your yearly, quarterly, monthly, weekly, and daily planning needs. Let's start with the basics here, the handwriting. Multiple scientific studies have shown time after time that writing by hand strengthens memory, improves comprehension of processed information, encourages deeper processing of said information, and enhances problem solving as well. How does that work? Well, because handwriting is a much more involved and, here's the key part, slower process than typing on a keyboard or tapping on a screen, it forces your brain to actually process the information that you are putting down on a paper rather than simply recording it or act as a pass-through to the fingers. I find this topic incredibly interesting, but beyond the scope of this video, because I'm not going to be focusing only on that. I'm including in the description of this video links to 3 of the most interesting studies that I found on this topic while I was researching stuff for this video. And I do encourage you, if you are interested, to actually read through them because the findings are, to me, they were quite impactful. There's a Mueller and Oppenheimer 2014 research paper that shows directly that longhand note-taking leads to better memory and better understanding of the matter at hand than laptop-based taking of notes. And the key difference here is that the act of handwriting activates other areas of your brain where basically you reshape and properly process the information that is passing through you. And here's the part that I found even more interesting. Typing, and especially tapping on a flat screen is even worse than typing on a physical keyboard. These actions cannot replicate that effect of processing information in the same way because they operate on a different cognitive level. So while yes, handwriting is slower and it's more involved than typing or tapping on a screen, the speed and especially the automation of input, digital input typing, means that you basically bypass many of the deeper understanding information processing mechanisms in your brain. Now let's talk a little bit about digital planners and organization tools such as Jira, Slack, or any of the, card-based tools with a mind map and different kind of things, and it's just like information overload. Now these are excellent when they are used for scheduling, notifications, collaboration, automation of repeated tasks, and integration of complex dependency and overall fluidity and flexibility of the platform that allows whatever you're working to organically grow, shrink, reshape, and be agile. And that flexibility and fluidity and agility means that it doesn't really have that many boundaries. but it does have limitations, especially when it comes to mental structure. There are many different platforms available, but pretty much all of them tend to be list, scroll, and menu based. And that, coupled with infinite amount of possibilities and interconnectability and stuff, makes it super easy to just lose the hold and understanding of the big picture. If you have an analog style planner, for example, this is the MDO, My Daily Organizer, that you can find on mydeepguide.com/shop, you have the boundaries of one page and what is the content of one page to do all of your planning and distribution of tasks. Or if I go to a day, for example, I can fill it out completely and see at a glance a full overview of how my day looks like. And here's the key point. When you fill this page up, and you start seeing how many entries there are. In an analog style planner, it's actually quite easy. If your page is crammed full of tasks for that day, then you immediately at a glance see that something is clearly wrong. In a digital list, you can scroll endlessly without even noticing that you've overloaded your week or day or even a whole month. There's no spatial constraint of any sort, and therefore no tangible visual feedback of the big picture. And this is one of the core aspects that makes analog style planning feel and actually work different, because it makes your own limits visible at a glance. Now, paper is wonderful and loved by many people, but it's also highly impractical in today's day and age. E-paper devices offer something unique. Depending on the platform, most of them allow you to have an environment that has no notifications, no distractions. They're comfortable for long-form writing, the good ones are. Great visibility in natural environmental lighting, and even in low lighting situations, you have devices that are equipped with a front light, making them perfectly visible in all lighting situations without introducing eye fatigue. Technology has advanced to such degrees where the writing latency is basically imperceptible on some of the leading devices today. And the inherent limitation of an electrophoretic display, the display refresh rate, that is also being improved on a almost quarterly basis. And when you equip a device like that with a analog style planner like MDO, it has a logical way of progressing through year, month, week, day, and navigating in and out of all of these things basically effortlessly, without any notifications, without any complexities, without anything, just feels completely natural to use. That empowers a device like this to a whole new degree, yet it's still something that's super portable, super light, paper-like handwriting tool, yet it's a digital tool that easily slots with your other existing digital tools and environments. And an e-paper device equipped with an analog style planner becomes this very unique type of a hybrid device. Something that makes analog style planning actually more effective in certain aspects than the digital style planning. So we've seen some of the strengths and weaknesses of both digital and analog style planning tools. What I want to share with you is a concept that completely transformed my way of thinking about planning and executing planning. And this method basically uses the strengths of both of these methods and platforms. Imagine a grid consisting out of 12 cells, and this represents your year. Each one of these is a month. We zoom into that square and it becomes a new grid that represents your month with the weeks inside, 4 or 5, depending on a month. Zoom into one of these and it becomes a week grid consisting out of days. Zoom in one final time and we reach the lowest level, which is the day. Each of those elements has a clear boundary and clear visibility. And when you put it all together and you zoom all the way out, it represents a rigid but a very solid and clearly identifiable framework. Digital tools, on the other hand, because of their flexibility and versatility, they are an ideal tool to use to fill in the details of each of these cells in this rigid but stable structure. Details, subtasks, rescheduling, attachments, project level granularity, or any kind of level of granularity, all of these things you should tackle by using your digital organizing tools, but contain them within the framework and the stability of an analog style planning tool. To simplify, you can think about it this way. Use the analog style planning to provide a structure for your plan, and use your digital planning tools to fill in the contents within that architecture. Once you reprogram yourself to see your organizing and planning needs this way, everything changes. It stops being analog versus digital. Should I do it this way or that way, and clashing and thinking, oh, this is better, that's better. None of that noise. It simply becomes a hybrid where you exploit the strengths of both of these methods at the same time. I spent a lot of time finding an organizing method that actually worked for me. And as some of you know, my background is in video game development. Primarily, I'm a 3D animator who then evolved to programming and entire game development in the end, and consultations, teaching, and blah, blah, blah. About 11, 12 years ago, I was working on a particularly tricky piece of game logic. And I just kept getting stuck. Like any creative kind of thing that when it just didn't go anywhere. And it was like that for a couple of days. I tried typing the logic, normally typing your flow thoughts, or using charts, using mind maps, using Google Drawings, like all sorts of things that you come to rely on because, you're using your computer. That's your tool. That's where all the power is. Of course, that's where you're going to do all of your planning as well, right? But none of that actually helped. And I still clearly remember the moment where I was like really frustrated, just hitting that wall constantly. And I started doodling. I had a notebook on the side and I just started doodling some stuff. And I wrote one sentence. And that sentence was, if I'm blind, what do I see? And it doesn't matter what it actually relates to, what the particular piece of game logic was, but that was the sentence that I wrote. And that very moment, basically everything kind of changed, because without even thinking, I continued writing my own thought process. And the process itself started to do the thing that it was waiting for me to actually allow it to start processing, and not just recording thoughts, but actually processing thoughts. And I discovered that over the course of several days, I had a backlog of really good thoughts and ideas, but they were just waiting for an opportunity to be properly processed. And that processing began only when I started to utilize the power of handwriting. It literally felt like somebody opened up the gate. Thinking process became so much clearer, and the ideas started to flow towards each other and connect in a more natural and more original and creative way. So a situation that felt completely impossible to approach from any angle and grew to an unsurmountable level of a problem basically evaporated in a matter of moments only when I started using the correct method for this particular problem. After that, I naturally continued doing what seems to be working, not really understanding why it worked, but over time, I started to pay attention to that, and I came to a realization that the digital tools aren't a good or effective support tool for my thinking process. So naturally, I adopted the notebooks and writing, and I, over time, basically started to discover even more levels of freedom, because when you grab a piece of paper and you start jotting down your ideas, you are not looking at the screen. Why is that important? Well, yeah, you have screen glare, eye fatigue, very real things. But there's also another thing. You're working on your computer or a tablet, where you have other apps, where you have your music. Back then, Skype notifications, Slack notifications, Discord, email, calendar, check this, check that. And before you know it, what was I? Recording some things? Oh, yeah, let me try and get back into that. And maybe you spend a little bit more time before another ding or a pling pulls your concentration and process away, basically obliterating any chance of a structure. With a pad of paper and a pen, I could move away from the computer, sit in my favorite chair, in a sofa, maybe even go outside if the weather permits, and simply write down ideas with absolutely zero distractions and complete and utter focus on what I'm doing. I could absorb the environment around me as well and let it inspire me. For example, if it's a rainy day outside, the trickling of the water down the drain pipes, the raindrops on the window, and the slight hum of the trees, I find that incredibly calming and inspiring, and it puts me into a completely different state of mind and thinking. And in front of me, I have a tool that is absolutely perfect for helping me process these thoughts that I'm having. And very quickly, it became extremely obvious how much more efficient I am and how much better work do I do when I do my logic and even pseudocode blocks on a piece of paper away from a computer. As the time evolved, thankfully, ePaper devices gotten to a point where they could actually become effective e-notebooks that can replace your notebook and paper, and thus removing the last obstacle of this process, which was how do I efficiently integrate my handwritten thoughts, notes, and everything into my otherwise overwhelmingly digitally oriented workflow. And once that happened, it was a very, very simple next logical step to actually develop an organizing tool for my own needs from this background. And that's how my daily organizer was actually born. I developed it for myself for this particular type of need and for this particular type of organizing structure. And my Deep Guide Meeting Planner was simply a next logical step after I worked for several clients and they had meetings about meetings where they would just move cards in Jira from one section to another only to forget about all of that the next Monday and do the same thing all over again, never actually achieving or completing anything really. So these tools were not actually made as products. They were made as tools for me primarily to use and then hopefully others to benefit from them as well. When I launched MDO, I really thought like, well, maybe 10, 50 people will actually find it useful, and if they do, great. Something incredible happened, and there's been actually tens of thousands of users, people from all over the world with the, widest variety of backgrounds, professions, and geolocations as well. And quite a few of them actually reached out to share their experiences using Analogue-Style planners and organizers on their own ePaper devices while using MDO and MMP. Geologists, engineers, mathematicians, physicists, teachers, professors, doctors, therapists, students. There was even somebody reaching out from a research station or from North Pole, as well as 2 detectives. And despite all of them coming from wildly different backgrounds and experiences, they all kind of started mentioning a couple of things that I noticed a pattern repeating. They reported clearer thinking, reduced stress, better structure, more efficient days, and interestingly, but not really surprising if you count these other 4, more time on their hand because of the increased efficiency. I mentioned this because some of these messages were incredibly touching because they were not about features and functionalities. They were actually about their own experiences, and it was a very real human experience being shared over something, that I never thought would kind of get there. Now, to stay completely objective, Analogue-Style planning has its limitations. Of course it does. Writing takes effort and time. Handwriting skills vary, and Analogue-Style planning tools cannot replace the versatility and power and complexity of digital planning tools. But to return to the first point, which is that writing takes effort and time, that's the very essence of this method, why it actually works. Because you have to allow time for your brain to process the information that you're working on. If there's more interest on me showing and creating a dedicated video on the specifics of how to integrate an Analogue-Style planning tool like MDO with the digital style planning tools, do let me know in the comments down below, because I can then make that type of a video happen if it's going to help someone. Adopting an Analogue-Style planning method or a hybrid that includes Analogue-Style planning method benefits a lot of people, but who are the primary groups that would actually benefit from this? Well, experienced ePaper users who never tried an analog-style planning solution, and newcomers to the ePaper world, because that is a unique type of advantage that you can get with a good pairing of a device and a product like an MDO. Professionals who on a daily basis are forced to juggle multiple complex responsibilities, one and another. Students who need structure but also processing information that they are learning. So as a learning method, it's also really, really good. And frankly, anyone who's suffering from the disorientation and fatigue of a digital planning type of approach. It comes down to this. If the digital tools that you are currently using are not giving you the results that you need, maybe the analog style planning is a structural component that is missing. The part that can finally bring your planning and organization under your own control. We didn't stop using the analog style solutions because they stopped working. We stopped because digital tools crept up their way and sold themselves as, I'm more convenient, I'm more at your disposal, I can do more, but at the cost of clarity. Analog style planning approach is not a nostalgic one, it is a cognitive tool. And ePaper devices basically transforming from slow e-readers to incredibly capable, sexy looking and really powerful e-notebooks make this analog style planning tool more accessible than ever before. If you've never felt the clarity that comes from using and integrating an analog style planning solution into your daily workflow, then 2026 may be the perfect time for you to try it out and experience it for yourself. And if you want to try out the analog style planning solution, well, you can head on over to mydeepguide.com/shop, where you can find both MDO, My Daily Organizer 2026 available, and MMP, My Deep Guide Meeting Planner. These are the planners that I originally designed for my own use. They were shaped over the years of experience and daily use, and have been improved over the versions through feedback from people from many different professions and backgrounds. If analog style planning becomes a part of your structure, routine, and workflow in 2026, I hope that it brings you the same level of clarity, structure, and a sense of control that it brought to me. And I'm really happy to say and hear from people to so many others as well. Thank you so much for supporting the work. Thank you so much for the feedback, for helping me make it even a better tool, and for sharing your experiences with these tools with me. It really does mean a lot. I hope that you found the video informative and or useful. If you did, please like and subscribe and ding the notification bell in the description below to get notified when new videos come out on My Deep Guide. Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe, stay healthy, and see you in the next video. Bye!